Aloha and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite parts of the file lesson, and that's working with comma-separated value files, or CSV files, as we call them. They're called CSV files because they end with the extension .csv. So .csv file, if you haven't seen it, it's a text file that it's arranged in rows, and the rows have items called fields, and they're separated by commas. So if you have a 5-item, if you have 5 items, it would be item 1, comma, item 2, comma, item 3, comma, item 4, comma, item 5. And that's how it would be represented. Then you'd have a new line, go to the next line, and then you'd have another 5 items separated by commas. The one thing to keep in mind is that you have to have the same number of rows, or I mean, not the same number of rows, the same number of fields in each row. And you can just do a check to see if you've got the same number of commas, and that will tell you if you've got the same number of rows there, or same number of fields in a row. So also we can open up these CSV files and manipulate them using the CSV module that's available in the Python standard library. So that's really convenient. All this functionality is baked in. So let me go ahead and show you how we go about doing that. And we're going to pull up our trusty VS Code. And in here, we've got import CSV. That's the first thing we have to do. We have to import the module. So after we've imported the module, we're going to do our open just like we normally do. And last time we showed you how to do that using a context manager. So we do the with open. I have my directory and the name of a file that I have imported, and I'll show you that file. It's something that I actually used. I made some Python that created this list of fictitious families that are located in Hawaii somewhere. So anyway, I actually wrote this whole program that generated this CSV file. It took, and this is the cool thing about Python, you can use it as a Swiss Army knife kind of tool in programming. And what I did was I had a program, a script that I wrote in Python that would take all kinds of CSV data that I had, read it in, and then randomize names. So I created random names for places. I created random phone numbers. I created random street addresses. But I also had another CSV file with street addresses of Oahu, and I had it generate random street numbers, or the numbers, and juxtapose that with the street names. I correlated using Python and some calls out to APIs, which we will not be talking about here. I had it actually figure out what city it was in and get the corresponding zip codes. But all of this is generated through a lot of different techniques, using as the basis of it the ability to read in CSV files. And in those CSV files, I had like the census data for names in Hawaii back in 1975. So I was using that as the basis for it. And then there were CSV files out there on the internet that has all the different street names of Hawaii and the zip codes and things like that. So I was very lucky that I could pull from those resources. But again, Python has this ability to read in these CSV files. Once you read it in, you can manipulate it and then write out whatever you want. So what I did here is I read in, or I generated all this random data, and then I exported this CSV file. But I was importing CSV files and exporting as well. So anyway, this is what the file looks like here. It's just a bunch of data, and you have different number, like here you have a data ID, I believe. Then you have like a first name, a last name. All of these data points are separated by commas. So what happens if you have a thing where you have like a comma in that field? Well, the way you would get around that problem, because if you have a comma like in an address, I did have things like that where I would have something come up and there was a comma in an address. Well, when you encounter that, it could be a problem. But if you do what we call escaping it by putting the entire data item, in other words, the things between the commas, if you put them in double quotation marks, it will preserve it. So it'll allow you to put commas within that double quotation marks or single quotation marks. So that's the very neat thing about this. Just be careful when you're constructing it that you don't have problems like that, because if you do, having that extra comma or two in there is going to your program is going to look at it and say, hey, this has the wrong number of items in it, and you may have problems. So yeah, often when you're dealing with CSV data, you have to be careful of that with your delimiters and things like that, but also you may have to do some data cleaning during the process, and that's something I had to do on several occasions. So just keep that in mind. I just wanted to show you here the families.csv file that we're going to be loading. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, all right, so we start loading the file as CSV file. We did this before. Then we're going to open up this reader object. So we're going to open up the CSV reader. We're going to say CSV reader equals CSV.reader, and we're going to send it CSV file. We could also put an argument in here that would say delimiter equals, and we can specify that instead of a comma, it's going to use like a pipe symbol, like this symbol right there. But yeah, and we don't have to, the default is comma, so we're not going to supply one here. We're just going to say, hey, CSV reader, CSV.reader, giving it the file pointer that we just called from the previous line. And once it does that, it's going to create this iterable object that we can iterate over. And so we can do the following. We can say for line in CSV reader, and then we can say for item in line, because what's happening is each line is going to be returned to you as a list of strings. So since you're getting a list, you can once again do a for loop over each item there. So we're doing a for item in line, and we're going to print that item out. And then we have this print statement here, because after we finish going through each data point in the line, each field in the line, then we're going to hit print, and it's just going to give us an extra new line. So if we run it right now, you'll see that we have these different fields. So we have different fields, one on each line until it comes down to the end of it, and then it puts in that little space from here, then it goes to the next item in there. So it just read all of the lines in families, and let's see, it only has like 190 in here. So yeah, so this is the convenient thing. We can go ahead and open up these CSV files, but like I said before, you also need to write them out sometimes. So for me, I was creating this. This data that I generated from other bits and pieces of data that I read in through CSV readers. So after I did that, I wanted to write it out. So here we have an example of how to write out some data. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of that. So after we've done that, I'm going to set up line 1 equals the strings Bob. It's a list of the strings Bob, Marley, and musician. Then we have the same for line 2 and line 3. We've got 3 different ones. Notice that this is a list, because when we were reading from that CSV reader, it basically gave us a list of the different items there. So when we set up the individual list here of the items of the fields, then we go ahead and we say open, and we're opening it for writing. So I made this test.csv, and then we're going to call it as file out. And then we go and we start our test writer, just like we did up here with CSV reader. We're going to do CSV writer, and we're going to give it the file handle that we just created, the file out. And then what we're going to do, we've got 2 different methods that we can use. We can do testwriter.writeRow, and writeRow is going to basically take one list and push that into the file. So what I did here was I took each of the 3 lines and I put them in there, but then I used the write rows. And write rows is very similar to before. It's going to be putting not just one list, it's going to put a list of lists and send that all into it. So I will go ahead and demonstrate this by running it. And after we run it, we can open up the test.csv file that I came up with. And indeed, here we have Bob, Peter, and Charles. And then we also repeated the 3 of them. And you can see that over here. So what we did was we wrote line 1, then we wrote line 2 and wrote line 3. Then I did a write rows and I combined into a list line 1, line 2, and line 3, and it put all of that into it. So yeah, that's the neat thing about CSV and working with CSVs. It's dead simple, easy to read them in. It's very easy to write them out. So once we're manipulating data and everything, we want to save it. This is a convenient way of doing it, and we have the CSV facilities built in right into the standard Python library. So yeah, so go ahead and play around with this. It's a lot of fun. I am finding myself opening up and saving out CSV files all the time. So this is an extremely useful part of the file section. Up until now, we've dealt with plain text files, we've dealt with binary files. This is specifically CSV, and CSV to me is really fun because that's where a lot of our data comes with. When you get data that's been generated by Excel or numbers or whatever it's been generated by, you can use your Python here to open those files up, take out the data, and then do what you like with it. And that's the wonderful thing. You can take it, you can manipulate it, you can create subsets of data, and then you can save those out as CSV files as well. So that's one of the things that I really like about this chapter. So if you have any questions, reach out to me, jsj3@hawaii.edu. If you want to set up a one-on-one meeting to discuss any of the things we have here, feel free to do so. I'm always happy to meet up and chat things out with you. So anyways, have a great day, and I will see you later. Bye.